بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على نبينا وقرة عيوننا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. This is our third session of the sessions that we planned to finish, inshaAllah ta'ala, an introductory and an intermediate level course in Tajweed of the Quran. And the way that we structured this was that we would explain what's in Tuhfat al-Atfal and Jazariyah and some extra things all combined in a structured manner, in a way to make it easy for you to understand the Tajweed of the Quran. And we're going to have some practical implementations to be able to read properly. Because you know the difference between learning Tajweed and learning fiqh. I'll give you an example. A lot of people have issues with memorizing arkan and sunan, fara'id, makruhat, al-hajj, for example. They study it, but they forget. And what's the reason? The reason is that some of abwab al-fiqh, like al-hajj, are things that you only do once, if ever. Once, if ever. So if you never do it, it's always going to remain theoretical for you. It's never going to reach that point of practicality. You won't implement it. You won't do anything with it. You'll just memorize it. Even for mashayikh, sometimes they don't have enough money to go to Hajj. So they studied it using the books of fiqh. But are they now able to describe the actual Hajj, arkan and sunan and wajibat to the believers if they ask them? It's hard. It's hard to explain something that you haven't experienced. Tajweed is different. Tajweed is all practical. Tajweed should not be theoretical. It's not like, well, I have a 5-year-old son or 5-year-old daughter. They barely know some Arabic. I'm going to make them memorize Tuhfat al-Atfal and Jazariyah and get the ijazah. But they do not read regularly on mashayikh. They don't do that on a regular basis. They just memorize the abiyat, the verses of these mutun. And what's going to happen is, most probably, they won't understand it truly. So what we need to do now is to explain and add some practical flavor to it. This is why I tell some brothers to come up. It's going to be more frequent and longer as we progress with these lessons. So just to recap before I proceed with the content that I prepared for you. Number one is we defined Ilm al-Tajweed. And I told you that Ilm al-Tajweed has 2 branches. I'm going to keep repeating, so don't get bored. Because sometimes you might miss some information. Sometimes you think that, okay, I memorized it. And then you go about your business and you just leave the masjid, you have your work, you come back, you forgot everything. So I'm giving you another chance and another chance to memorize these or to take note. Tajweed has 2 branches, theoretical Tajweed and practical Tajweed. Practical Tajweed is mandatory. It's mandatory. No one can say, well, yeah, there's a sheikh or a muqri'ah for brothers or sisters who is right next to us, like right across the street, but I don't have time to learn Tajweed. Some people say that, I don't have time. Tajweed, what's Tajweed? I know how to speak Arabic, I know how to read it, it's fine. Allah Azza wa Jal will not punish me if I don't say the ghunnah. Some people make fun of this, and believe me, I've heard it. They say, what is Tajweed? You're wasting your time learning and teaching Tajweed. What is this? Mad, 4 harakat, harakatan, 6 harakat, this qari said that, this qari said this. Well, actually, if someone is making fun of this ilm, they're making fun of what the Prophet ﷺ used to do. He used to teach fiqh, he used to teach tawheed, he used to teach the Sahaba radiallahu anhum how to avoid shirk and everything that is similar to shirk, like shirk asghar, shirk akbar, and muharramat, everything. And at the same time, he used to correct the tilawah of the Sahaba. So no, practical tajweed is wajib. It's fard ayn. Theoretical tajweed is fardu kifaya, which means that if a few of us, if enough of us, this is fardu kifaya. A lot of people don't understand it. They say fard kifaya, if a few people learn it, then I'm okay. We have ulama in the ummah. Okay, where are they? Can you now say confidently that in every masjid in Toronto right now, there's someone teaching tajweed and itqan of the Quran? Every imam in all of the masajid in Toronto is mujaz in qira'at ashr in the Quran. Can you say that? Can you say that atmamna al-kifaya? Now we have enough ulama in this ummah. We don't need to learn ghunna and mudud and I don't know what. If we say that, in a few years we're going to end up with a ummah that doesn't know how to read the Quran. Because if I ask you now, and I ask a lot of brothers who read the Quran and who recite it to me, and I say, if I want to read the word mirsada, is the ra muraqqaqa or mufakhama? They say, no, I think it's mufakhama. Okay, justify, prove it. Well, I don't know. Why do you say Fir'aun, but you say mirsada? Well, I don't know. If you don't know and you're a hafiz of the Quran, then what do you think is going on with people who do not memorize the Quran, who barely know the Fatiha? How will they read Juz' Amma? This is Juz' Amma. Inna jahannama kanat mirsada. They don't know it. So even the basics, you need to memorize mutun and you need to memorize the ahkam so that you can teach people. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. This is what the ulama say, it's the khayriyah. Khayrul ummah, the best of Muslims are the ones who learn the Quran and teach the Quran. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Just that? No. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, you have to do. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Ahlul Ilm said that this means that in order for you not to be losing every day and to be on the right path, you need to learn. You need to do good deeds, implement what you learned. You need to teach it and give advice to Muslims. You need to teach that. Zakatul ilmi ta'limuhu. Just like wealth, just like money, it's far more important than money. Al-ilm. What you leave behind you, I mean money and wealth, you will not enjoy it anymore. That's it. It will not give you any more rewards in the grave. What about ilm? إذا مات ابن آدم انقطع عمله إلا من ثلاث. One of them is علم ينتفع به. So when you teach the Quran and this ilm is propagated from generation to generation to generation, starting with your kids, of course, and your brothers, then this is how it should be. The last point about this, and I'm taking my time, I'm going to finish in 6 weeks, don't worry. I'm taking my time because this is far more important than learning the details. I always need to remind you why you're sitting here. You're not sitting here because, well, it's fun, we're learning something new. No, you're sitting here because it's as important as learning your salah. Even more important at some point. You know why? Because An-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, La salata, there's no salah, it will not be counted, it will not be accepted. لمن لم يقرأ بفاتحة الكتاب. So the prayers of the ones who read the Fatiha and make mistakes, and specifically lahan jali, which I'm going to be detailing, make severe inaccuracies and mistakes while reading the Quran, their salah won't be counted. If your salah is not counted, then how do you answer people now who always say, well, I'm going to learn fiqh. Why waste my time? In this period of 5 years where this person is learning Tajweed, or 4 years, I would have finished Sahih Muslim and Bukhari. I would have finished Kutub al-Fiqh. A lot of people say that, by the way. Don't think that I'm imagining things and just talking about nonsense. It's happening. And I hear it, not every day, but every once in a while. There are a lot of people who think that Tajweed, this is a low level of ilm. Fiqh. And then if you ask that person who rejected Tajweed and told you that fiqh, usul fiqh, hadith, come back in 5 years and ask them, did you memorize Bukhari and Muslim? No. Did you memorize fiqh? No. Okay. So you just keep repeating that this is far more important than Tajweed, but you don't do either. You end up studying nothing. So no, you need to start somewhere. And I'm not saying learn Tajweed and don't learn anything else. Learn it in parallel. There are some ulum that you can learn in parallel. You can learn Tajweed along with fiqh and hadith. There's no problem. It depends on your schedule and your priority list. A lot of us have priority lists. And sadly, memorizing the Quran or memorizing mutun al-ilm comes at the bottom of the list. It's something that, well, I don't have to do it. Yeah, you have to do it. This is why I'm doing this introduction and repeating it. You have to do it. Practical Quran, at-tajweed, at-tatbiqi, this is wajib. Every Muslim and Muslimah should learn. And learning the names of them, khayshum and ghunna, bila ghunna, mad lazim, mad muttasil, mad munfasil, sila sughra, sila kubra. If you know how to do them, you're on the safe side. But you are ineligible to teach them. If you want to teach that material, you need to memorize the terminology. And of course, to memorize the terminology, you need to memorize mutun. It doesn't look nice when a sheikh tells you, no, this is incorrect. And then you ask them why. They say, well, because this is what my sheikh told me. No. You have to memorize mutun. You have to say, because Ibn al-Jazariyah rahimahullah said this. Al-Jamzuri rahimahullah said that. Al-Shatibi rahimahullah said this. Al-Sakhawi rahimahullah said that. And so on. This is how it should be. This is what they do in Morocco, Maghrib. This is what they do in Mauritania. This is what they do in Jazair. This is what they do in Tunis, even Libya. They take care of memorization a lot more than us. And I come from the Middle East and I know what I'm talking about. In Lebanon, Syria, it's more like we learn Sharia, but we don't memorize it. It's not my case personally. I followed the track of Maghariba and Shanaqita in memorizing a lot and repeating and memorizing and repeating. This is what I do, but this is not about me. I'm just giving you an example. If you want to teach something, you need to memorize it. It's not like I'm teaching you Al-Jazariyah and I didn't memorize it. I memorized this years ago, among a lot of other things. So now to go back to this point, which is, what is the subject of Tajweed? It's the Arabic letters. And I told you that we have 28 or 29, depending on the perspective. If you're talking about spelling, you're talking about al-mantuqa, the letters that you pronounce, these are 29. If you're talking about the letters that you write, these are 28. And I told you that the first letter is not alif, it's hamza. It's hamza. Yu'min. This is the hamza. That's the first letter. And the way they write alif is lam alif. It's la. And then they highlight the alif. This is how they write it. So it's not alif ba ta, it's hamza. But we say alif ba ta, but you need to know that this is not alif, it's hamza. And then I told you that these letters have two ways and two structures, two ways of writing them. You either follow the abjadiyya, abjad hawaz, or abaj dahaz hutti kalam nasa fadaq rasat. I told you about these. And this is the actual order of these 29 letters, or 28. Or you can follow the shapes of the letters, right? Do you remember this? I told you that last time. Alif, and then the ones that look alike. Ba, ta, tha. You have this shape, and then you have the dots. Either under, or above, or 3 points above. Alif, ba, ta, tha. And then you have the jim and ha and kha. They look alike. And I also told you about writing the letters that Hamza is what? Not Hamza, I mean the Sukun. It has two shapes, right? Sukun is not a circle. Sukun is Ra'su, أي حرف. Either Al-Ha or Ayn, but مقلوبة. It's something that goes like that. And the circle that you see in the Mus'haf, this does not mean the Sukun that we teach as Sukun, Fatha, Kasra, Dhamma, or Dhamma, Kasra. This circle means you do not pronounce this alif. And this is, inshallah, if we have time, we're going to explain these al-alifat fil Quran. When you say al-dhununa, al-rasula, when you say ana, lakinnahu Allahu Rabbi, these alifat, you see them but you don't pronounce them. What if I stop? What if I join? How do I read them? These alifat, they have a separate section that we will need to deal with, of course, and explain. So what are the main origins or points of articulation of these letters? You have al-jawf, which is the hollow space in your mouth and throat. This is called al-jawf. Some people said yes, some scholars, of course, not some people, random people. Scholars said that no need. Don't say we have al-jawf. Alif, waw, ya. Al-jawf is not really a makhraj. Let's just add them to other makharij. Ibn al-Jazari followed the path of the ones who said that no, we have al-jawf. Alif, waw, ya. How do you say them? You say There's no tongue in it, there's no teeth in it, there's no lips, nothing. Just u, e. This is how you say it. And the reality that you need to understand so that you can master reading the Quran, it's very important. Alif is fatha, fatha. It's two fathas. So if you ask yourself what is sit harakat, 6 harakat, what is it? It's 3 times alif. So 3 times. So when a reader says وَلَضَّالِّينَ, this is 12 actually, it's not 6. It should be وَلَضَّالِّينَ. This is 6. How do I know that? It comes with practice. So it's mushafaha. This is why it's wrong to use AI to learn tajweed and qira'at. Please consult with the sheikh and let them teach you, or a muqri'ah. So this is called al-jawf, alif, waw, ya. And then you have the throat, and the throat has 3 parts. Aqsa al-halq, which is the farthest from your mouth. Hamza, yu'min, and the ha, ihtazzat, ihtazzat. This is the second. And then you have the middle part of your throat, wasat al-halq, and what are the letters? Who knows? Wasat. Anyone knows? What did Ibn al-Jazari say? ثم لأقصى الحلق همز هاء ومن وسطه فعين حاء, right? So it's عين and حاء. يعمل. If you say يعمل, يعمل, this is not a عين. يعمل, يعمل, and حاء. تحمل, تحمل. This is the Arabic حاء. It's not a ها. تحمل, تحمل, and we're going to discuss this in detail today. Inshallah, I'm going to explain the sifat today as well. So it's going to be a long session. Hopefully it's going to be interesting, and there's going to be a practical part in it. So this is the throat, wasat al-halq. أدناه, أدناه, غين خاؤها, which is خاء. أدناه غين خاء. Okay, so غين خاء. And there's an important thing in ghayn and kha. A lot of people read it incorrectly. إِلَّا مَنِ اغْتَرَفَ غُرْفَةً بِيَدِهِ. In Surah Al-Baqarah. How do you read it? A lot of people say إِلَّا مَنِ اغْتَرَفَ غُرْفَةً بِيَدِهِ. This is wrong. Why did you say manigh? They say, well, there's a kasra before it. Okay, so what? It's muraqqaqa. That's wrong. Ghayn is never muraqqaqa. Who said that ghayn can be mufakhama and muraqqaqa? Ghayn is always mufakhama. Then what about the fact that the ra, if it's sakina and before it you have a kasra, it's muraqaqa. It's the ra. This is exceptional. This is just for the ra. You don't do the same thing. You don't do qiyas in tajweed. Okay, so in tajweed there's no qiyas. There's nothing called, well, I'm going to take this hukum of the ra, I'm going to replicate this with other letters. That's wrong. You don't do qiyas in tajweed. So we say إِلَّا مَنِ اغْتَرَفَ غُرْفَةً بِيَدِهِ مَنِ اغْتَرَفَ. And the kha as well. And this is where most people do this, the same mistake. إِنَّ فِي اخْتِلَافِ فِخ. There's no فِخ. إِنَّ فِي اخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. إِنَّ فِخ. You need to do this tafkhim. فِي اخْتِلَافِ. Okay? This is very important. The things that I'm highlighting are the common mistakes that even a'immat masajid make commonly. Don't do that. And it's more common, to be honest, in Egypt. They do that. إِنَّ فِي اخْتِلَافِ. And if you have a qaf maksura, I'm not talking about the scholars in Egypt. I'm talking about how the Quran was spread across the globe. How did it happen? We need to admit that Misr, نسأل الله تعالى أن يحفظ أهل مصر وعلماء مصر. Misr, they had these big shot qurra, the big qurra like Al-Minshawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, Abdul Basit, Abdul Samad, Al-Husari, rahimahullah ta'ala, these very important reciters of the Quran. But the problem is that even if they had a few mistakes, and it's not my job to pinpoint these mistakes, rahimahumullah ajma'in, what happened was that billions of people were learning the Quran using the radio. They used to listen to the Quran and repeat, listen and repeat. Even kids till now. What they've done is to teach the kids. They took Al-Minshawi, rahimahullah, Al-Minshawi's tilawa, and they opened it using an equalizer, and they played with the frequencies, and now it's like a child reading, and Al-Minshawi, rahimahullah, reading. You know these tilawas on YouTube? You'll find them teaching kids how to read the Quran. They take the reader's qira'ah, reciter, and they increase the frequency. It becomes like a child is reading. It's actually him, it's not a child. It's just the frequency. They played with the pitch and the frequency. It sounds like a child. So even kids now, they do it. They read like this. إِلَّا مَنِ اغْتَرَفَ إِهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ قِي. This is not a qaf. Mustaqim. This is a kaf. Mustaqim. قِيلَ لَهُمْ. This is not a qaf. So what we say about these letters, if it's harf tafkhim, but it's maksura, it's still mufakhama, but the lowest levels of tafkhim. قيل قيل اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. We don't say mustaqi. Qi is not the makhraj of qaf. Al-mustaqim. This is how you do it. Okay? So three pieces of advice. One is what? When you have kha and ghain, if it's sakina preceded by kasra, what do? Tafkhim, normal. And if you have, what else? A qaf that is maksura, you don't do qi. It's never muraqqaqa. Never. That's never the case. Qaf is always mufakhama. Ghain is always mufakhama. Kha is always mufakhama. Dad, diza. We don't say diza because it's maksura. Qismatun diza. It's diza. So it's qi, khi. Or you can say khi, but we don't say that. Even this one, by the way, kha maksura. A lot may think that, okay, kha is maksura, it's muraqqaqa. It's never muraqqaqa. Even if it's lighter when you pronounce it, it's never muraqqaqa. Even if you say khi, ghi, it's still مفخمة أدنى درجات التفخيم, the lowest levels of تفخيم. Okay? So this is about the halq, and these are things that I should mention to you. And then you have the tongue, and the tongue also has different parts. It has أقصى اللسان, like the qaf, ق, ق, إق, اقترب, إق, ق. It's not إق, إق, ق, إق, ق, مستعلي. And I'm going to explain these, by the way. It's just like you're studying fluid dynamics. If someone maybe studied some mechanics and some engineering, it's fluid mechanics actually. It's when you have breath, you have sound, it's the way it propagates. It either goes upwards, downwards, is it turbulent or not? It's really just like studying physics. So you need to understand the mechanics and statics and dynamics of air and of sound to be able to understand what's going on. When we say صفة جهر, همس, when you say استعلاء, استفال, what's the meaning of that? A lot of people don't understand them. They mix them up. They don't know the actual differences. So you have the tongue, أقصى اللسان, ق, and then you have closer to that k, k, the k sound, حرف الكاف, and then you have اللام, النون, الراء, and these are using the tip of the tongue with slight differences. Some scholars said, okay, even if you have slight differences, lam, nun, ra, that's the same thing. Don't bother even trying to explain. But the reality is that no, they're different. ثلاثة مخارج, lam, nun, and ra. And I explained those during the last session. I'm going to be sharing the slides just after that, because I was editing the slides. That's why I didn't share them. I was editing a few things. And then when you finish with the tongue and all of these letters, you have the teeth. This is why sometimes if a Muslim, a brother, a sister cannot really properly pronounce, maybe they have anatomical problems. What I mean by anatomical problems is that their tongue is not long enough, or you have this kind of tissue underneath your tongue. It's short. Your tongue cannot hit the upper jaw. It cannot say al, ar, ar. So they end up saying ar, ar. They can't say it. In this case, do we say anta athim, anti athima? You're sinful. What you're doing, that's a sin. It's haram. How are you reading the Quran this way? No. Allah, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إن الله رفع عن أمتي ماذا؟ الخطأ والنسيان وما استكره عليه. If you make a mistake, but you don't intend to make it, it's unintentional. It's not a problem. If you forgot, it's not a problem. And if you were forced to do something, it's not a problem. In this case, not something that you're doing intentionally. Do we tell people just don't read the Quran? No. We say you cannot be an imam. That's the distinction that you need to understand. We don't tell people don't read the Quran. A lot of, I don't want to say Muslim groups, a lot of Muslim in between quotation mark groups in our countries, I'm not going to name them, they exaggerate everything in Tajweed, and they do not allow their followers to read the Quran. It's haram. You need to study Tajweed. Okay, and how do I learn Tajweed if I do not practice? How can I do this? This is wrong. You cannot tell a child, well, you don't know how to read. Just memorize Tuhfat. And how do I practice ahkam al-Tuhfat? I need to read and someone needs to correct. Right? It's a continuous process. Feedback. So you cannot say that if I don't know it, I don't do it. It's not salah. Even in salah itself, right now, a lot of Muslims who are 50 or 60 years old, 50 or 60, just go to the muwadda or where they make wudu. They don't know how to make wudu. 30 years, they don't know how to pray correctly, how to do wudu correctly. Why? Because people tend to take things for granted. I know it, it's easy. Nothing is easy. Nothing is easy and nothing is difficult. You just need to give it time and learn properly. That's the issue. Tajweed is the same thing. إِلَّا رِيَاضَةُ امْرِئٍ بِفَكِّهِ. It's practice. You need to practice. So then, if you cannot, your tongue cannot move that dynamically and accurately, it's okay. You get ajran 2 rewards instead of 1. الذي يقرأ القرآن وهو عليه شاق. It's so difficult, she cannot read it. وهو يتتعتع فيه, like stuttering and reading, it's hard. They can't master it. These get the reward twice because they're trying and because they're reading. So 1 point for effort and 1 point for the actual reading. You get 2. But you need to keep trying. And then you have الشفتان, which is the point that I ended my previous lecture last time on. So it's الشفتان, the lips. I was telling you very important points, and I'm going to start this new session with these points. 1, don't use your lips except for 3 letters. Except with 3 letters. First is ba. Second, mim. Third, wawun ba'un mimu, right? 3, ab, b, ab, aw, ab, aw, These are the only 3 letters that you use your lips for. Do not use it with ra. This is wrong. A lot of people say ar-Rahman, ar. That's wrong. Why are you doing this? I'm not doing this with my lips. That's wrong. And to give you more, I'm telling you this is by experience. I've seen a lot of brothers and sisters read, and I know that this happens. What they do is, when they want to make tafkhim, they do that. This is wrong. There are no lips involved in this. The lips are only involved in 3 letters. Aw, ab, just 3. Waw, ba, and mim. So this is where the lips come into play. And partially in fa. What do I mean by partially? When you say f, فالفاء مع أطراف الثنايا المشرفة, right? So you have these 2 teeth, these 2, the first 2, الثنايا العليا, and your lower lip, f. This is how you say the fa in Arabic. F. Don't say f or f, like blowing something. This is not a fa. F. These 2 teeth should hit the lower lip. F. That's the correct fa. This is how we say it. So after explaining all of this, now you understand that every letter has an origin.
So you said that is partial and not like a part of the lips?
It's partial because it's not just the lips. You also have these 2. Yeah. So it's F. But Ibn al-Jazari rahimahullah ta'ala did not say للشفتين and then mention the fa. He did not mention the fa. Just waw, ba, and mim. Fa comes just before. It's like a transition between the ones where you use your teeth and the ones where you use your lips. It's intermediate. You use both. F, you use your upper teeth and you use your lip. Okay? So now, if we understand this properly and correctly, we understand that in order to read the Quran properly, you need to know where each letter comes from. Okay? Is that clear? Now, is that enough? No, it's not. Why? I told you the other day that, let's say I want to distinguish between the Arabic ba, harful ba, and the English p. P and b. How do you do that? It's exactly the same makhraj. Ab, up, ab, up. What's the difference? That's the difference. Listen carefully. B, b, p, p. Did you hear the difference? I'm going to repeat. B, p. What happened in the P? I expelled breath, not sound. I told you about this last week. It's not last week, actually. Maybe a few days ago. So this is very important. And this is my introduction to Sifat al-Huruf. You need to understand that you have 2 entities. One is hawa, nafas, breath, and the other is sound. Breath and sound. These two are completely different. So you may expel breath, but sound has nothing to do with it. And you may raise your voice, but your breath is not changing. And you may change both, so it's not complicated. I'm going to be explaining this. So without further explanation, I'm going to go into the صفات الحروف. I cannot see the screen. Can you see it? Okay. So صفات الحروف. What are the attributes of the letters? صفات or attributes or characteristics or qualities. In Arabic we say صفة. 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 صفة is one characteristic. The plural is صفات. صفات. And this is called الجمع بالألف والتاء. It's incorrect to say جمع مؤنث سالم. I know that it's what they teach us, but the truth is it's called جمع بالألف والتاء. Okay? Because it's not always salim. It's not a nahu or sarf lecture, so I'm not gonna explain it. But just keep this in mind. A lot of the things that they teach you at school are incorrect or inaccurate. So this is al-majmu' bil-alif wa-ta, صفات. And this is actually an attribute that is affixed to the pronunciation of a letter. And it has two types. It's either intrinsic or circumstantial. So it's either an intrinsic sifa, a sifa that is always with that letter, no matter what comes before, no matter what comes after, no matter what you do, no matter what the word is, it's always the same thing. Sifa, that's it. Inherit. It's sifa lazima. We call it sifa lazima. It's permanent. It doesn't change. We call it sifatul lazima. And this is in mad lazim, we say mad lazim. Everyone does it. No matter what riwaya, what qira'ah, everyone does it. But the difference is how many harakat. Is it 4? Is it 5? Is it 6? Is it 3? Is it 2? Or not 2, actually. It's not additional to the mad anymore. But anyway, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you have permanent sifat, permanent attributes, and you have temporary attributes. Temporary are sifat or attributes that are affixed to a certain or attached to a certain letter in some cases. In some cases, not always. And what I'm going to be explaining today is a part of the permanent sifat, which are the sifat that have opposites. Some sifat, some attributes have opposites. Like when you say jahr, the opposite is hams. There's no in between. It's not like it's a linear scale. It's just two, binary. You just say jahr, hams, that's it. Isti'la, istifal. 2 cases. But some sifat, some attributes do not really have opposites. When you say safir, for sad, as, safir, it doesn't have an opposite. It's not like you can say this harf is safir, this is not safir. It's just safir. Sheen, ash, at-tafashi. It does not have an opposite. In dad, we say This is how the tongue moves. This is called istitala. It doesn't have an opposite. So some attributes have opposites that we will study today, inshallah, and finish. And some sifat or attributes do not have opposites. So you need to know the difference. And what happens with al-makharij is different than what happens in sifat if you miss one or if you mistakenly read it or inaccurately read it. You need to understand the difference. If you are inaccurate in makharij, you're going to change the letter. If you're inaccurate in a sifa, you can't read a sifa properly, what changes is the sound of the letter. There's a big difference in between. There's a difference between I wanted to say a ta and turned out to be a ta. Like talaq, talaq. لينذر يوم التلاق. Talaq is talaqi. And talaq is divorce. Totally different. So if you don't know how to pronounce the ta and you say التلاق مرتان التلاق, what's التلاق? There's no talaq anyway. It's always a kasra because there's a ya which is محذوفة. But anyway, التلاق is different than الطلاق. So we need to understand that we're changing the meaning of the word in Arabic if we do that. In English, it's easy. It's not like if you mispronounce a word, then you change the whole meaning. It doesn't happen in English. Because as I always tell you, it's a poor language. English is a poor language. It's an irregular language. It's not like you learn rules like you do with Arabiya and then you master it. You learn a billion rules and then you end up practicing something else when you speak with native speakers. So in Arabic, we don't have that. If you learn Fusha, if you learn it properly, you're going to be speaking and reading properly. We don't change our mind. It's not like you have a word where you have the same letter, but Arabs felt like reading it differently. It doesn't happen in Arabic, just in English. So now, what did Ibn al-Jazari rahimahullah ta'ala say? I'm going to read the abiyat, translate them, explain them, and then I'm going to show you diagrams and figures, illustrations, so that everything is crystal clear. So bear with me, let's just read these. Rahimahullah ta'ala, Ibn al-Jazari said, صفاتها جهر ورخو مستفل منفتح مصمتة والضد قل مهموسها فحثه شخص سكت شديدها لفظ أجد قط بكت وبين رخو والشديد لن عمر وسبع علو خص ضغط قض حصر. These three abiyat are going to be the topic of this, the remaining part of this session. These are the sifat that have an opposite. Firstly, sifatuha, the attributes of the letters. Jahrun wa rikhwun mustafil. Munfatihun musmatatun. These five, jahr, rikhu, mustafil, munfatih, musmat, five. وَالضِّدَّ قُلْ, and say the opposite. So these five have opposites. Before I explain, you need to understand that not all sifat that Ibn al-Jazari rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned are sifat of relation or related to tajweed. When he says musmata, this is not a tajweed topic. So we're going to explain it now. Sifatuha jahrun. So its attributes are jahr. This is the first. Then said, وَرِخْوٌ. Rikhwun, loose. Rikhu is loose. It's a loose letter. So you need to distinguish between two things. The name of the attribute and how you describe a letter. So when we say jahrun, this is what? This is the actual sifa, al-jahr. But how do you describe a letter? You don't say this harf is jahr. What do we say? Majhur, tamam. So we say majhur, على وزن مفعول, majhur. Rikhu. I'm making you understand how this thing is going. Jahrun is the sifa. Rikhwun is not the sifa. It's how you describe a letter. This is why we cannot just blindly memorize. You need to understand. Jahrun is the sifa, al-jahr. Al-harf, the letter is majhur. Okay? When he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, rikhwun, the letter is rikhu. The sifa is not rikhu. The sifa is rakhawah. Rakhawah. So the first sifa is jahr. The second sifa is rakhawah, which is being loose. Mustafil. Mustafil is how you describe the letter. What's the name of the sifa? Istifal. Istifal. Okay? It's istifal. And the hamza in istifal is hamzat wasl, not hamzat qata'. So we don't draw a hamza under it. This is something that a lot of Arabs do not know. They don't know when to place that hamza al-qata'. They draw it like ana hamza alif, and when not to draw, not to draw the hamza. When you say istifal, it's because I cannot begin with sukun in Arabic. I cannot say stifal, stifal. We say istifal. Like ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana. We don't say du'u, right? Du'u ila sabili rabbik. We say ud'u. Why? If you open the mushaf now and you check that alif, there's no hamza qata'. There's no hamza and dhamma. You just have alif and dhamma. You don't have the hamza. So this is called hamzat wasl. We pronounce it, but we don't write it. So jahr is the first sifa. Rakhawa is the second sifa. Istifal is your third sifa. And then munfatihun. Is munfatihun the name of the sifa? Or is it the actual description of the letter? We say harfun munfatih. But the sifa is infitah. Is this hamza written or just pronounced? Just pronounced. Hamzat wasl. Okay? Infitah, we say infitah. And then musmatah. Ismat has nothing to do with what we're going to be explaining, so don't focus on musmatah. Al-idlaq, idlaq, wa ismat, these are different things. These are things that are related. You can understand this way. It's related to certain linguistics. It's related to linguistics and related to sarf from a certain perspective. It's not actually related to tajweed. So don't focus on this. Focus on jahr, rakhawa, istifal, infitah, وَالضِّدَّ قُلْ. What's the meaning of وَالضِّدَّ قُلْ? And say the opposite. What's the opposite? Who knows them? Can you tell me? What's the opposite of jahr? Hams. What's the opposite of rikhu or rakhawa? The opposite of rikhu is shadid. But the opposite of the sifa, rakhawa, is shiddah. رخاوة شدة. رخو شديد. هذا حرف شديد. هذا حرف رخو. صفة الحرف الرخاوة صفة الحرف الشدة. Okay? منفتح. What's the opposite? مستفل. مستعلي, right? Yeah, istifal. The opposite of istifal is isti'la. The opposite of mustafil is musta'lin. Okay? Okay. So let's explain now. Then mahmusuha. Mahmusuha, this is what? It's the opposite of jahr. Mahmus. But now he switched to another gear. So now instead of telling you about the sifa, he's telling you about the description of the harf. Mahmus, which is hams. Mahmus al-huruf, mahmusuha, فحثه شخص سكت. The letters of hams are these letters. Fa, ha, tha, ha, sha, kha, sa, sa, ka, ta. These letters, each of these letters is harf hams. Why is it called hams? I'm going to explain that. شديدها لفظ أجد قطم بكت. These are الحروف الشديدة. أجد is همزة, جيم, دال, قاف, طاء, باء, كاف, and ta. So now you may ask me a question. You may say, well, you have the kaf and the ta already in the previous one, mahmusuha. Kaf and ta are already mahmusa. How is it possible for it to also be shadida? What's the answer to this question? If someone asks you, well, sakat, sin, kaf, ta, bakat, ba, kaf, ta. So how come the same letter is in two categories at the same time? Is it possible? What's the answer? Yes, no? So can a harf have multiple sifat? Yes. So that's the correct thing. One harf may have different sifat. It should have more than one sifa. Because each sifa is describing an aspect. It's like saying, my house is old, spacious. These two things are different. It can have two characteristics. Why not? It can have 10. It depends on what you're actually describing. So I told you previously that we're describing the breath, and we're describing sound and the direction of that sound, right? So you need to have 2 or 3 sifat to be able to describe breath, sound, the flow of that sound, and the direction of that sound. You need to be able to describe these 3. So you can have, and you should have, more than one sifa to be able to accurately describe every letter. Is that clear? So مهموسها فحثه شخص سكت شديدها لفظ أجد قض بكت وبين رخو والشديد لن عمر. So you have رخو, you have شديد, but you have things that are in between, intermediate. And this is لام, نون, عين, ميم, راء. لن عمر. Then وسبع علو, 7 letters of علو, استعلاء, سبع علو, like elevated letters, خص ضغط قض, and that's it. So this is wrong here, it should be here. حصر, a lot of people think حصر is a part of it. حصر is not a part of it. So I tell you, you need to study this carefully and not trust the translations or whatever you find. قض is the last one. خص, خاء and صاد. ضغط, ضاد, غين, طاء. قض, قاف and ضاء. These are 7. حصر means it's confined to these 7. حصر is not related to the حروف استعلاء. It's a separate word. So now let's understand them. You have attributes that have opposites. These are called as-sifatu al-mutadaddah. Now you may ask, why did I say mutadaddah? You're not reading the Quran, just say mutadaddah. This is a very important thing that you need to know. A lot of people don't know it. Tajweed did not come from nothing. Tajweed is not something that the Prophet ﷺ invented. Arabs used to have rules when they spoke. When there's an alif or a waw or a ya that has a hamza afterwards, it used to be longer. It's not like you would meet a certain Arab and then ask them about the sky and they would say, as-sama'u jamila. No, as-sama'u jamila. This is how they spoke. These are the narrations of scholars. I'm not speaking like inventing things. But people think that this is exaggeration. It's not exaggeration. Then what's the difference? Are you telling me that people used to read the tajweed when they used to speak, like naturally? No. What I'm saying is tajweed is a bit longer. That's the only difference. So when you say هؤلاء قوم ضالون in Arabic, this is how they used to say it. هؤلاء قوم ضالون. ضالون. You cannot say ضالون. ضالون. It doesn't sound correct. ضالون. You need to prepare this, to prepare your mouth and your articulation and your pronunciation to be able to pronounce اللام المشددة. ضالون. If you try to say ضالون, it's wrong. It sounds wrong. ضالون. So what's tajweed? It's just adding mad to it, adding some pressure. When you say إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, they used to say إِنَّ, but in tajweed we say إِنَّ. It's a bit longer. So if someone asks you, why do you do that? Because this is how the Arabs spoke. This is how they spoke. They used to do that mad and shadda and everything, but it didn't sound so long. It was a bit shorter. So, what are these الصفات المتضادة? One, جهر versus همس. جهر, همس. And then you have شدة versus رخاوة. In between you have بينية. بين is between in the Arabic language. بين. ما بين means between this and that. بينية. And you have استعلاء and استفال. And you have إطباق and انفتاح. So look carefully here. إطباق has a همزة. إطباق has a همزة underneath. But انفتاح does not. Why? Because the root of the word you say أطبق. أطبق إطباقا. So it's from the origin, the root of the word أطبق. It's not طبقة, it's أطبق. So it's part of the word. You write it. انفتاح, what do you say? انفتح. انفتح. You don't say انفتح, انفتح. It's you don't pronounce it. You just pronounce it whenever you're starting with it. Whenever you start, you read it like it's the first word, you should do that. You should pronounce it, but you don't write it. So it's إطباق with a hamza, انفتاح with no hamza underneath. These are the صفات that have opposites. So now, let's go into the details. Okay? Jahr and hams. What is hams? Hams is the flow of breath. Flow of breath. This is exactly what hams is. So, مهموسها فحثه شخص سكت, right? Let's begin with the f. F. Did you hear my breath? This is flow of breath, not sound. Even if I'm here. There's no difference, just breath. Nothing's going on, it's just expelling breath. This is hams, very simply. So whenever you pronounce these letters, you have to do this, expel breath. So I'm going to give you the entirety of the thing and explain it. When I say فحثه شخص سكت, أف, أح, أث, أث, فحثه شخص, أش, breath, خاء, أخ. And this is very important. A lot of people exaggerate when they pronounce the kha. Akh. This is not the Arabic kha. This is wrong. Even when people over here, Westerners, try to make fun of Arabs, this is what they say. This is how the Arabs speak. It's all full of kha. That's incorrect. And even our kha is not like this. We don't exaggerate. Akh. Can you hear it now? Akh. This is the kha. It's not. This is not the kha. I don't know who says it like this, but this is how some people say it now. That's not a kha. This is the kha. Inna fi ikhtilafi. Fi ikhtilafi. This breath, this is it, hams. So you have the makhraj now, right? And you have the sifa. You know the makhraj of the kha, and you know the sifa of the kha. Now you know how to pronounce it. Akh, akh. That's it. So don't exaggerate. Don't say akh, akh. This is the kha. Shakhsun, sad, as, as. Breath. Sakat, as. Kaf, ak. Okay. So now there's a difference and you need to take note of this. Sometimes the letter is easily recognizable as harf mahmus, even if it has fatha on it, dhamma, kasra, like sin and sad and sheen and kha, right? You say si, sa, su. There's hams, there's breath. What if it's a ta? And this is a common mistake as well. I keep saying common mistake because I want you to learn things that if you're not a native speaker, you will not be able to do it. I'm a native Arabic speaker and I'm telling you this confidently. It's wrong when you do hams with kaf and ta if there's no sukoon on it. A lot of people do that. Ta, ka. كان. تا. Give me a word with a تا مفتوحة. تبت يدا أبي لهب وتب. تبت يدا أبي لهب وتب. That's wrong. There's no hamis if it's مفتوحة. Ta, ta. This is how they say it here in North America. When they say the ta, ta, tally, ta. We don't say it in Arabic, we don't have that. Ta, 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 ta. There's no hamis in it. Minimal, you can barely hear it. Ta, 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 ka, ka. Okay, there's some breath, like 1%. But it's not ka, kana. Tabbat, we don't say that. Ta, ta. So why did he mention it then? When it's sakina, you can hear it, and you should do it. We say yaktub, yaktub. And you need to understand that there's also a zaman, there's a duration. Don't pause a lot. If you pause long enough, it will reach a point where it's sakit. It's very important. Don't say فليك or وليكتب. وليكتب. يكتب. This is sakit. Don't do it. يكتب. 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 It's very fast. Give me another example. أترابا. كواعب أترابا. أترابا. Don't say أترابا. أترابا. Don't make a pause in between. That's wrong. أترابا. And the other mistake, and this is very important, and also you need to note this, it's not a seen. Hamis is not a seen sound. Don't say أترابا. أتس. كانت لهم إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات كانت لهم. كانت. This is incorrect. This is not a hams. This is seen. كانت. This is صفير. That's a seen. كانت لهم. كانت. So how do I do this then? Easy. You know the makhraj? كانت. Look carefully. كانت. Just release your breath. That's it. كانت. كانت. جنات. That's it. Press, release. Press, release. Without pausing a lot. Don't say كانت. كانت. Don't press too much. كانت. جنات. Don't exaggerate and don't lower your jaw. If you lower your jaw, it becomes a scene. كانت. كانت. This is wrong. So this is hamis. How many letters do we have? 10. 10 hamis letters. The letters of فحثه شخص سكت. Why does breath flow in these letters? It's because it's slightly dependent upon the makhraj. It depends on it just at the beginning, and then you release it. It depends on it a bit, and then you release it. You say at, ak. See what I'm doing now? Pressing, releasing. It's just like you have air in something, like a balloon, let's say. You release a bit. You will hear this hissing sound. كانت. قالت. قالت. No need to exaggerate. That's exactly how you should do it. So it's soft. As for jahr, this is the stagnation of breath. And I'm using technical terms. Stagnation of breath. You say something is flowing, and the opposite is stagnation when you have no flow. Stagnation of breath. There's no flow of breath at all. This is jahr. How many jahr letters do you have? It's easy. How do you do the math? If 10, and this is how Ibn al-Jazari wants you to do it. If you have 10 that are hams huruf, huruf hams, how many remain? The total of huruf al-mantuqa is how many? 29, right? 29 huruf mantuqa, so it's 19. So do I do this with all sifat? No. You do it with صفات التي لها أضداد المتضادة, because it's either this or that, binary. You don't have a third option. So if either one of these 10 or one of those 19, that's the case. So what is jahr in Arabic? It's loudness. Your voice is loud. We say this person is jahuri. صوته جهوري. Not jahwari. Some people say jahwari. Jahuri. Yajhar. Where is it mentioned in the Quran? Who memorizes the Quran here? Completely. Why don't you raise your hand? You memorize the Quran. Jahr in the Quran, where is it? Not necessarily the word jahr, although it's also existent, but any derivation of jahr. Jihara, you mean, right? Jihara, okay. Which means out loud. Other example. Come on, let's review the Quran together. That's the point. Other example. ولا تجهر بصلاتك. What's the meaning of that? So it's loudness. One more. إلا. He told me about jihara. Yeah, so we need a third one. Third example with jahr. Surah Al-Hujurat, maybe. No. Surah Al-Hujurat. قوله تعالى ولا تجهروا له بالقول. Where is it? Which surah is this? No, we said ولا تجهر بصلاتك. The ayah that I mentioned, where is it? In what surah? Which surah is this? No. ولا تجهر بصلاتك ولا تخافت بها. We said that. ولا تجهروا له بالقول كجهر بعضكم. Hujurat, right? Or not? Come on, you need to review the Quran. You need to review more. Ramadan is approaching, inshallah, so yeah. You know, one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life personally is memorizing the Quran. And the main reason, of course, after رضا الله سبحانه وتعالى, which you can never guarantee. نسأل الله تعالى أن يرضى عنا وعنكم. But it's the pleasure of being able to remember an ayah no matter what happens in your life, no matter in what circumstances you are, no matter what you're thinking of, you always have an ayah about this. And this is مصداق قولي سبحانه وتعالى ما فرطنا في الكتاب من شيء. That's not the exact meaning, of course, it's one of the meanings. Whatever you think about, whatever you endure, whatever you say, you always have the Quran with you. It teaches you how to say it properly, and teaches you what to say. So this is one of the barakat of the Quran. It's to be able to say, I have an ayah for everything. I can just use the Quran instead of giving my own opinion. So did you find the ayah? No. ولا تجهروا له بالقول. Recite the ayah. No, this is for غيبة يحب أحدكم. This is another ayah. ولا يغتب بعضكم بعضا أيحب أحدكم. This is another ayah in Hujurat. Then فوق صوتي. Which surah is this? Okay, so this is the ayah. So this is jahar, loud voice. Okay? And this is what, because we were learning the Quran and ahkam al-Quran, so let's just mention something. This is what some people do. If you're in a masjid, you're praying a sunnah, or even at home, do not raise your voice if other people are praying next to you. Because it causes disruption and tashwish. So don't do that. Even if it's a salah jahariyah and you have different jama'at, although it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen that in the same masjid sometimes, it's like people don't trust the imam who is at the masjid. So there's a jama'ah, and then other people come, there's another jama'ah, and a third jama'ah, like 10 jama'ahs in the same masjid. Don't raise your voice if it's the case, because you're going to be causing tashwish. And even if you're praying next to someone, salah sirriyah, don't raise your voice so that you do not cause this tashwish. Anyway, so 19 letters are jahar letters. Why is there no breath flow? It's because it's strongly dependent upon the points of articulation. I'll give you an example. If it's not فحثه شخص سكت, give me another. Jim. How do you pronounce the jim? Before qalqala. Ad. Right? Focus. Ad. This is the jim. Ad. Completely closed. Right? Aj. Aj. Dal. Ad. Ad. Closed. Right? Let's give you some examples. Can you see? Is it clear? So hams, for example, you have harf al-shin. What's happening in this case? You have the vocal cords, they're opening. Because actually, where's air coming from? Where's your breath coming from? Your lungs, right? So it needs to traverse this and go out. It needs to exit the lungs, it's air, and goes out of your mouth or nose in some cases. So these should be open so that the air could exit. This is hamis. These vocal cords open, you have breath that exits. This is hamis. So this is an example of sheen. So as you can see, let's combine now makharij and sifat. You have this, see this over here? This is what location in the tongue? Aqsa, wasat, or taraf? So it's wasat al-lisan, yeah. It's the middle part, wasat al-lisan. So this is wasat al-lisan, and this is where breath is exiting. Ash. This is open. This is open, and air is exiting. It's wasat al-lisan. Okay. Al-jahr, like this letter, which is al-lam. Al. Now focus. Do you see any air exiting? It's sound, jahr. These are closed. When these are closed, you can feel some vibration over here. It vibrates. S, it doesn't vibrate. S, there's pressure. This is closed. When this is closed, you feel the vibration. So this is harf majhur. This is an example of, like it's the same thing but different letters. So this is zay and this is sin. What's the difference between zay and sin? Zay and sin are ahruf safir, right? As. What's the difference? It's hamis and jahr. What's the meaning of that? In zay, and this is also a common mistake, there is no letter called harf zayn. Zayn. It's zay. Zay. We don't say zayn. A lot of people say ra'un zaynun. Zaynun. There's no zaynun. Zay. Zay. Za alif ya. Zay. Ayn. Okay, ayn. Ghayn. Okay. Zayn. No, that's wrong. Zay. So harf zay, how do you say it? As. This is closed. It's not about breath anymore. But when you say S, it's breath. This is open. S. Okay? So this is the difference between jahr. I have a question. That's a good question. You have the sound of the letter, you have the name of the letter. Two different things. Al-harf wasmu al-harf. Okay? So you can say ra bil-mad, harf al-ra, but the sound of the letter is ra. Ra without the ra. So harf al-ra, but when you spell, you don't say ra, alif. You say ra. The proof is in the Quran. How do we read alif lam mim ra? Alif lam ra. Alif lam ra. Ra. We don't say ra. Right? You don't pronounce the hamza. So how do you pronounce the letter? You say ra. But za, no, I don't know about this one. No one says za. They all say zai. Ra, zai. No one says za. You can say ha, kha, but you don't say za. And dad, you don't say da, dad. So when you have this mad, ra, ha, kha, this is called mamdud. You do this. You say ra, ha, but when you read the letter, the name of it, you just say ra, ha, kha. Okay? Second question?
What's the difference between hams and tafashi? If she is also doing hams.
Tafashi is going to be explained in the next session, but it's about this breath being spread all over your mouth. Ash, it's all over, right next to your tongue and above it, ash. It's like airflow that's going in different directions out of your mouth, all around your mouth. This is tafashi. Tafashi, it spreads. But hams, there's no definition of hams that says it should spread in your mouth. As long as it exits, that's hams. So sheen, it has how many attributes? Multiple. One of them is hams, right? فحثه شخص شخص. So you have hams. But if you want to describe hams further, in this case, you say tafashi. So tafashi is a special case of hams. Is having the breath spread all over your mouth. This is called tafashi. So this is hams and jar. Now we explain shiddah, rakhawa, bayniyah. What's harf shadid? Now it's not breath, it's about sound. Shidda and rakhawa and bayniyah, it's all about sound. So you have the makhraj and you have the sound. When this sound is retained, as you have retention of sound, it doesn't exit smoothly. This is called shidda. Like what? Ajid, qatim, bakat. What's happening at the makhraj? You need to focus. It's on or at the makhraj. So I'm gonna do the slow motion version of these. Ajid, qatim, bakat. You min. Right? You min. This is the hamza. What happened? It closed completely. You min. You min. Jim. Give me an example of jim. هو اجتباكم, okay? اجتباكم. اجتباكم. Do you see this? اج. Ed. Do you get the point or not? I'll give you another example. Dal. Give me an example. Shadid. 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 This is what's happening. It's closing, opening. Closing, opening. This is actually why the harf is shadid. It's because when you pronounce it, you hold it. And then you release. This holding is called shiddah. Shadid, Majid. I'm doing this slower than the usual. Don't say Shadid. This is wrong. Shadid, Majid. But if you slow it down, It closes, then opens. How many letters do we have in total? It's 8. أحرف الشدة 8. أجد قطيم بكت. So the exit is fully closed temporarily until you release it. So it's not like you just close it and that's it. You say you mean. No, it's you mean. It reopens for the other letters to flow. So it's the full closure of the exit, restricted sound flow. And then you have بينية. بينية, it's in Lin Umar. What's the meaning of بينية? حرف بيني means it's restricted but not completely. Partial restriction of sound. So when I say al, focus on that letter now. Al, what's happening? My tongue is touching the upper jaw, the upper part, al-hanak. We say al, but air is going to the sides of your tongue. Sound is going to the side of your tongues, to the right and to the left. So it's constricted in the middle part, in the center, but on the sides it's not. So al, lin, al, noon. And what's open in noon? Who can answer this? A noon is completely closed. And your tongue is, it's your nose. And it's the nasal passage. It's khayshum. Mim, lin, umar, it's your nose as well. Ayn. Ayn, if you close it completely, it becomes a hamza. And a lot of non-native speakers, like foreigners to the Arabic language, this is how they say it. وَمَن يَعْمَلْ, because they close it completely, it becomes a hamza. It's in between. It's يَعْمَلْ, يَعْمَلْ. If you open it completely, it becomes an alif. يَعْمَلْ, يَعْمَلْ. If you close it completely, it becomes a hamza. يَعْمَلْ. If it's in between, it's ayn. يَعْمَلْ, يَعْمَلْ. مَنِ اعْتَدَى, مَنِ اعْتَدَى. Okay? So this is bayni. Ra, I explained the ra last time. You always have an orifice when you pronounce the ra, underneath the teeth. Ar. If you don't have this orifice, it doesn't sound like a ra, it becomes takrir, which is wrong. وأخفي تكريرا إذا تشددوا. If you do ar without the opening, it becomes there's no way that air can exit or sound can exit. You need to keep this orifice to pronounce the ra. Ar over here. So this is why it's bayniyah. What's the third? It's rakhawa. Harfun rikhun. Loose. Why is it loose? Because at the makhraj, it's fully open and the sound can exit very freely. This is why it's called rikhu. It's the ease of flow of sound through the point of articulation or al-makhraj. How many letters are there? 16. Weak letters. Rikhwa. Loose letters. Why does sound flow? It's because sound is weakly dependent on the makhraj. It's open. So if you compare it with harf al-shadid, it's a bit louder. Now there's an important point which is not mentioned in Jazariyah or Tuhfat al-Atfal. The point is that you have differences in length and duration when you pronounce these letters. Al-harf al-rikhu is the longest. Al-harf al-rikhu أطولها زمنا. It's the longest. Al-harf al-rikhu. Al-harf al-bayni is shorter, and al-harf al-shadid is even shorter. It's the shortest. What does that mean? This is something that is relative. It's relative. It's not like it's just 1 second. This one is half a second, this one a quarter of a second. We don't do that in Tajweed. Why? Because we have different speeds of tilawa. I'm going to speak about these at the end, inshallah. You have al-hadr. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. See, this is fast. You have tadwir. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. And you have تحقيق. And this is how we learn the Quran at stage 1. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. And this is how you should teach your students if you're doing Iqra, at least for the first few months. You need to do this. They need to learn tahqiq so that you can hear the makharij, sifat properly and make sure they're reading correctly. And then, even people say that, see this mad with Hamza and Warsh, ست harakat, even in muttasil and munfasil. Some scholars claim that they used to do that with students, the ones who just began reading the Quran, just started. This is why it's so long, relatively speaking. It's not because they wanted to make it longer. It sounds longer when you're in the beginning of learning the Quran. So why am I explaining this? You need to understand that when I say rikhu is longer than bayni, longer than shadid, I don't mean the speed of tilawa. I mean relative lengths, relative durations. So when I say j, ijtabahu, okay? It's short. J, it's short. When you read the noon, give me an example. أنعمت. Listen carefully. ijtabahu, أنعمت. Isn't it longer? A bit longer. It's very accurate. It's a bit longer. What about the حروف الرخوة? It's even longer. Like what? Give me a letter that is not shadida and not in Lin Umar. Ha, right? Kha. Give me a word with a ha. Al-ahqaf. Al-ahqaf. Ahqaf. This is another advice, and I took it from my mashayikh, jazahumullah khairan. When you read a harf sakin, it's longer than harf al-mutaharrik. A bit longer. A bit. So when you say tahmilu, you don't say وَمَا تَحْمِلُ 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 تَحْمِلُ. It should be clearer when it's sakina. So imagine harf that is at the same time rikhu and at the same time sakin. It becomes one of the longest. But not long enough or to an extent where it's like sakit. Tahmilu. Don't make this sound. It's not too long, but it's longer. And this is a bit advanced, but I need to mention it. I can't just skip these information. You need to listen to these. We still have like 5 minutes. So let's see some examples. This is harf shadid. Okay, so look here, please. Do you see this? It's completely closed. See this? Jim, ajj, completely closed. And then you have rikhu, completely open. Like sheen, ash. And this is in between. In between. So you have this letter and you have this. And noon wal mim. And this is completely closed. In the mouth it's completely closed. But the nasal passage is open. So it's bayni. Half of it is closed, half of it is open. And the mim as well. Closed over the mouth, but it's open here. Then you have isti'la and istifal. I think this is going to be the last for this session. Isti'la and istifal. What is isti'la and what's istifal? A lot of people make this mistake. So I'm going to take these 5 minutes or 4 minutes to explain this. Isti'la is not tafkhim. Istifal is not tarqiq. Some people use these terms interchangeably. هذا حرف مستعل مفخم. مستعل is not مفخم. مستفل is not مرقق. There's a difference. What's isti'la and istifal? What is described as musta'lin and mustafil? What is it? It's the direction of sound towards the upper jaw. If it's going up, isti'la. So when you say as, as. Sound is going up. And it's this constriction of sound that is going up that makes it mufakham. So what do I mean by this? Tafkhim is a consequence of isti'la. So if a harf is mufakham, it's musta'li. If it's musta'li, if it's musta'lin, it's mufakham. Mufakham is a result, a consequence of isti'la. خص ضغط قض. So I say it's going upwards. As, going upwards. ضا ضا, going upwards. غين غا, going upwards. طا قاف ضا, same thing. Istifal does not mean it's going down, but it's not going up. So it may be going forward, maybe going down. It's not musta'lin. This is the depiction of it. This is musta'li. Harf al-qaf. When you say qa, what's happening? Your sound is going upwards. It's hitting the upper jaw. When you're saying kaf, ka, it's not qa. If you do that, qa, it becomes a qaf. Ka. It goes directly outwards, doesn't go up. So this is the difference between isti'la and istifal. Now, what is the consequence of isti'la? It's tafkhim. This is when Ibn al-Jazari says mustahaqqaha. This is the result of being musta'li. It's of being mufakham. And the result of being mustafil is being muraqqaq. This is a harf mufakham. It's because it's going upwards, it's getting stuck in between your tongue and your upper jaw. This is why it's mufakhama. It's because it's going up, there's nowhere to leave, it's stuck inside, it makes this sound. Kha, qa, qa. You have air going upwards or sound going upwards and it's getting stuck inside. And this is istifal when it's going outwards without going up. So the final point before adhan, inshallah, a few seconds. The letter is either musta'lin or mustafil. Musta'lin or mustafil. And for isti'la, it's always mufakham. You will never find harf musta'lin that is not mufakham. But for istifal, sometimes it's mufakham and sometimes it's muraqqaq. So you cannot say if it's mustafil then it's muraqqaq. That's wrong. If it's mustafil, sometimes it's mufakham. Like what? Like al-alif. Alif follows what's before it. If what's before it is mufakham, it's mufakhama. Qala, sa, da. Harf al-lam in lafz al-jalala, if it's not preceded by kasra or ya. Allahu, it's mufakhama, but lam is not harf tafkhim. It's not like the English lam. It's not harf tafkhim. And then you have the ra. It's a different section. We're going to be explaining this separately. Ra, when is it mufakhama and when is it muraqqaqa? But also ra has two cases. Tarqiq, if it's mustafil, some of the huruf are muraqqaqa at all times. ذلك والله أعلم وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين.